The distress call came in at 0300 hours, station time. Commander Jorith of the Velthan Interspecies Observation Fleet stared at the blinking alert on his console with the particular expression worn by beings who have just realized the universe is considerably stranger than advertised. The signal originated from Sector 9 of the Arothkai Nature Preserve, a restricted zone housing some of the most dangerous juvenile predators in the known galaxy. The Kale Pride's cubs. Gone. All units converge on Zone 9, Jorith ordered, his tail lashing with anxiety. We have a Category 7 breach. The Kale litter is unaccounted for. The implications were catastrophic. Kale Vera, the dominant cub, barely 8 months old but already manifesting the lethal instincts of his species, had been observed last week bending a reinforced alloy feeding trough with his forepaws simply out of boredom. His 6 siblings were no less formidable. 7 juvenile apex predators from a species that evolution had designed over 40 millennia to be the perfect killing machine, now loose somewhere in a 600-hectare nature preserve. With 1 human researcher still on overnight duty inside. Someone get me Mara Ellison's calm frequency, Jorith barked. Now. Mara Ellison was not answering her calm because Mara Ellison was deeply, profoundly, and very contentedly asleep. She was also not alone. Her sleeping bag, a battered, forest green affair she'd patched 17 times and refused to replace out of pure sentimental stubbornness, had somehow, over the course of the night, become the centerpiece of what could only be described as a catastrophic pileup of very large, very warm, very snoring predator cubs. It had started with Kale Vera. Mara had been reviewing behavioral data at her portable workstation around midnight when she'd first felt the nudge against her boot. She'd looked down to find the cub, nearly the size of a Terran Bengal tiger, with iridescent fur that shimmered between deep amber and midnight black, sitting behind her with the specific expression that Mara had come to identify as "I want something and I am too proud to ask directly." "Kale," she'd said, without looking up from her datapad. "No." He'd nudged her boot again. More insistently. "I'm working." A low, rumbling vocalization. Not a growl exactly, more like the noise a thunderstorm would make if it were trying to seem casual. Mara had sighed, closed her datapad, unzipped her sleeping bag, and held it open. "Fine. But you're not getting the whole thing. I need room." Kale had flowed into the sleeping bag with the liquid grace of his species, circled twice, and settled with his enormous head resting across Mara's shins. Within 3 minutes, he was producing a sound like a diesel engine attempting to purr, which was the closest thing a Kale juvenile could manage to contentment. Then his sister Lyss had appeared from the dark tree line, spotted the situation, and decided she also deserved to be part of it. Then Breck. Then the twins, Nola and Finn, who always went everywhere together. Then shy little Cora, who usually kept her distance but apparently couldn't resist the magnetic pull of a warm sleeping bag full of siblings. And finally Wrath, the youngest, who simply sat on top of the pile because there was no longer any room inside it and refused to acknowledge that this was in any way undignified. By 0200 hours, Mara Ellison was entirely surrounded, partially buried, and completely pinned by 7 juvenile apex predators, all of whom were snoring in overlapping frequencies that created a sound like a malfunctioning orchestra. She had not moved for 2 hours because she didn't want to disturb them. She had, in fact, taken out her datapad with one carefully extracted arm and was continuing her behavioral research by recording extensive notes on nocturnal social bonding behaviors in juvenile Kale litters, with particular focus on unexpected interspecies trust manifestations. She was, professionally speaking, having a fantastic night. The search team found her at 0317 hours. Senior Warden Dex, a 12-year veteran of the Arothkai Preserve who had once tranquilized an adult Kale male in full territorial display, came around the edge of the treeline with his pulse stunner raised and his hearts hammering at approximately 4 times their resting rate, and stopped dead. He stared. He lowered his weapon very slowly. He reached up and activated his calm Commander Jorith, he said, in the carefully controlled voice of someone who is processing something that has temporarily overwhelmed their capacity for normal speech. I've located the cubs. Static. Then, status? Are they contained? What's the threat level? Dex looked at the scene before him. 7 of the most dangerous juvenile predators in catalogued galactic history, piled in and around a single human sleeping bag like a litter of oversized domestic kittens. The human in question had one arm around Kale Vera's neck with the casual ease of someone hugging a favorite pillow, her datapad still glowing softly in her other hand. One of the twin cubs, Nola or Fun, had placed a massive paw directly over the human's face at some point during the night. Mara had apparently dealt with this by tilting her head to the side and going back to sleep. All 7 cubs were breathing in slow, synchronized waves. Deeply unconscious. Happy. Kale Vera, the cub who had dismantled a reinforced observation drone 3 weeks ago simply because it had beeped at an inconvenient time, had his head tucked under Mara's chin and was making the diesel engine purring sound loud enough that Dex could feel it in his back molars. Threat level is. Dex paused, searching for the appropriate professional terminology. Minimal. Sir. What does that mean? Where are they? They're asleep, Commander. Another pause. In the human's sleeping bag. The calm went silent for a very long moment. All of them. All 7, sir. Yes. Including Kale Vera. He appears to be the one she's using as a pillow, sir. The silence stretched longer this time. Then Commander Jorith, who had filed 47 incident reports in the past year alone, most of them concerning the Kale litter's increasingly creative methods of causing chaos, made a sound that Dex had never heard from him before. It took a moment to identify. He was laughing. They waited until sunrise. The research team, the search team, Commander Jorith himself, all of them gathered at a respectful distance, watching, because none of them were willing to be responsible for waking up 7 juvenile Kale predators who were currently demonstrating the only behavior no one had ever managed to document before in the species' entire catalogued history. Peaceful sleep in proximity to another being. It wasn't the first time humans had done something that left the rest of the galaxy scrambling to update their behavioral models. The Velthan observation fleet had 17 ongoing files dedicated specifically to anomalous human-fauna interaction incidents, a category that had been created after a human xenobiologist on Preth 4 had, over the course of 2 field seasons, apparently befriended the apex territorial predator of that world by the simple method of sitting near it every day and not doing anything threatening until the animal ran out of reasons to object. The Kale litter file had been opened 6 months ago, when Mara Ellison had arrived at the preserve and within her first week had made eye contact with Kale Vera without flinching. The cub had stared at her for 40 seconds, a dominance display that had sent 3 trained wardens diving for cover, and Mara had stared back with the calm, attentive expression of someone who found this genuinely interesting. Kale had broken eye contact first. He'd been following her around the preserve ever since. The behavioral analysts had theories. Humans moved differently, no predatory tension, no prey animal fear scent. They were strange-shaped, soft-voiced, smelled like nothing threatening and nothing edible, and they had this baffling tendency to sit with things rather than fighting or fleeing them. They approached the universe, apparently, with a fundamental assumption that most things could eventually be befriended if you were patient enough. It was, by any objective metric, an absolutely absurd survival strategy. It kept working anyway. Mara woke to the sound of 17 beings trying very hard to be quiet and not entirely succeeding. She opened her eyes. Kale Vera was already awake, watching her with his amber gaze from 3 inches away. He made the low rumbling sound. Not demanding, just acknowledgement. "Morning," she said. He flicked one enormous ear. She became aware, gradually, of the audience. The wardens. The research team. Commander Jorith, who was holding a recording device and wearing the expression of someone witnessing a historical event. Mara looked around at the pile of cubs. Looked back at the assembled observers. Considered the situation. I was cold, she said simply. They were warm. She reached up and scratched Kale Vera behind the ears. He closed his eyes, leaned into it, and intensified the diesel engine purr until nearby equipment began to vibrate in sympathy. Commander Jorith added 3 new pages to the anomalous human-fauna interaction file and quietly amended the preserve's emergency protocols to include a section titled, "Before initiating a Category 7 search, check the human's sleeping bag first."